OK, thanks very much, Becky. 8 minutes to 5 on BBC Radio Stoke. Apprentices have been in the news a lot of late. It's weird, really, because you look around here and there's so many empty buildings that are derelict. So why aren't people working in them? One company's completely renovated a derelict building and turned the factory into student accommodation. Much of the work was used as training for local apprentices doing their NVQs. BBC Radio Stoke's Hannah Quinn went to the building near Lichfield Street and she bumped into one of TV's most famous builders, Ground Force's Tommy Walsh, who was seeing the completed building for the first time.
Well, it's amazing. When I first came and had a look at it, it was just a derelict building, completely derelict, been left for 15 years. And even worse than that, it had fire damage. And fire does a lot of damage to the structure of the building, the fabric itself. So I'm completely blown away when I've come back and I've seen the way they've turned this around. And the units are fantastic.
It's nice to get a compliment from the boss at the end of a project. But these apprentices did one better, getting praise from Ground Force's Tommy Walsh. But as Development Director Ricky Sharma explains, it was more hard work than showbiz for the students.
They enjoyed it. It's a building site. They've got to understand, and they learned very quickly that, they're not in a training environment. This is not a training, this is assessment. You're on site, you're on a building site, you've got to adhere to the rules of a building site. So it was very, very useful experience for them. Some had the experience beforehand, some didn't, and it was fantastic. So then ultimately they all went out and, able now, they're all in jobs. And that's the end goal. That's just the fantastic.
Dr. Jan Talensky owns the building.
Well, it cost 54,000. So imagine what state it was, roof falling in, absolute derelict, and nobody wanted it. Normal developer would never buy it because you would make a huge loss. But because it serves as a training centre, and I'm very passionate about supplying, we've put in building industry probably 5,000 people which we train for the jobs. I mean, all the people who did their apprentice here got their jobs, got their NVQ, they're all working.
Tommy Walsh started his building career around 40 years ago and has been impressed by the modern technology that the students have access to.
They do a lot of it by simulation. So they have this special software simulator that they do everything they need to learn, they do on there. And if they make mistakes, they can make it on the simulator. And then when they've got it all right and they're experts at doing it, then they're actually put in the field to do the work.
You weren't tempted to ask the students to complete it in 2 days like your time on Ground Force, were you?
No, what I find is really nice about coming here and looking at this, I'm not being asked to build a tower block in 2 days, as you quite rightly said. It's just, there is a time scale. Obviously, the best thing to focus the mind is always to put a time limit on something, and then and the students have to learn, because in the real world there are starting dates and finishing dates, and this teaches them by using the simulator not to make mistakes, and that's a great new tool. And the fact that they make all their mistakes on the simulator and not in the field means that they can cut down the time of completion. And I just think, hey, it's great, and more power to your elbow. And I doubt whether they'll ever be as quick as me to get it done in 2 days, but thankfully they won't have to.
That's BBC Radio Stoke's Hannah Quinn speaking to Tommy Walsh on Lichfield Street in Hanley earlier.